Peace, family.
Peace.
Hotep.
Hotep.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Salam salam.
Shalom, shalom.
Habari za mchana. I always open up like this because I never know who exactly is in the audience. So we as an African people, we encompass a lot of things, a lot of people, and a lot of backgrounds. So we want to make sure that we hit on all of it. I give thanks to our ancestors for us being here today. I give thanks for the elders who have been able to lay the foundation for us to present today. To them I say Ashe.
Ashe.
Ashe. Ashe. So to give you a little background about myself, my name is Talib Saber. I am an attorney. I have my own firm, the Saber firm, located in Greenbelt. I'm also an activist and a filmmaker. And one of the things that I really take to heart for our people is building community and making sure that we have the institutions that are in place that really help to effectuate and make sure that we advance as a people. Okay? And as it pertains to reparations now, and while we're here today, I'm going to start by reading a bit of a passage from the Willie Lynch letter. When it comes to the breaking of the uncivilized Negro, use the same process, but vary the degree and step up the pressure so as to do a complete reversal of the mind. Take the meanest, most restless Negro, strip him of his clothes in front of the remaining male Negroes, the female and the Negro infant, tar and feather him, tie each leg to a different horse faced in opposite directions, set him afire, and beat both horses to pull him apart in front of the remaining Negroes. The next step is to take a bullwhip and beat the remaining Negro male to the point of death in front of the female and the infant. Don't kill him, but put him in fear of God, for he can be useful for future breeding. When people ask us, why is it that we need reparations, or why is reparations important, this is why. These are the things that our ancestors went through.
Yes, sir.
These are things that they had to be subjected to. And going a little bit further, the breeding farms. He talked about the end of that passage about the breeding farms. Our ancestors were bred. You had the mothers had to sleep with their children. The fathers had to sleep with their daughters. All these things. That's where the term MFA comes from. But do we know this as a collective community? Let's talk about the Casual Killing Act of 1669 down in Virginia, where the slave master could kill our enslaved African ancestors, and they get compensated by the government for the loss of property, as we would consider. And then they have the notion to ask us about why we need reparations. All right, insurance companies. How many of y'all heard of Aetna? All right, how many of y'all heard of New York Life Insurance? These are institutions that took out policies on our people when we were enslaved as an African people, that still are in existence today. So when they talk about old slavery was so long ago, these institutions are still in existence.
Come on.
This is how they built their wealth, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, and our ancestors helped to build this country. We're talking about UNC Chapel Hill, we built buildings there. University of Virginia, Monticello, Thomas Jefferson.
Come on.
You know, when it comes to what happened in the South, it wasn't just the South. When we talk about enslavement and we talk about slavery, we're not talking about just one region of the United States, because the enslaved Africans would pick the cotton and it would get shipped to the North, and the North would put it on the global economy. So everybody was a participant in this. It wasn't just one region, it's the whole United States. All right? And at present, again, this whole notion of it was so long ago. Nowadays, our black men incarcerated, it's about almost 1 million black people incarcerated in jail to this day. You know, we talking about Jim Crow laws that formed into black codes, that formed into different type of discrimination and segregation and all these things that happened to us, that institutionalized the practice of racism and white supremacy. Okay, so this is not something that is just so long ago, because we still speak in English.
That's right.
That's
Where's
right.
the mother tongue? You know, we still don't understand our culture and our heritage as an African people, because that was stripped away from us. So we can't allow them to tell us that we don't deserve reparations. We don't deserve some type of compensation, because if you can compensate the European Jews, if you can compensate the Japanese, if you can compensate all these people, and not talk about our ma'afa, talk about our reparations, and what happened to us as an African people, then you sadly mistaken. Because we're not going to take that, and we're not going to sit down for that. And that's the reason why we have this reparations today. Colonial slavery lasted roughly 246 years. But neo-colonial slavery, the slavery today, still is in existence for 400 years. That's right. 1619 is when they captured and kidnapped us from the shores of Africa and brought us here in America. 400 years of torture. 400 years that is translated into police brutality, illegal stop and frisk, mass incarceration, gentrification, which is a new colonization.
That's right.
You know, healthcare discrimination. The fact that we can't even go to the hospitals without us losing a toe or losing a finger. We go in for a slight headache. How we walk out with no organs, or do we walk out at all?
Sometimes.
You know? So I just wanted y'all to understand exactly why we're here, to lay the foundation as to why we're here. And I'm gonna get into the actual first panelists. And before I do that, remember, this is going to be broadcast on black-empowerment.com. Or it is broadcast on black-empowerment.com. So make sure that you post that, you share that so everybody can tune into it, also on Facebook Live. And I want to, before I get into the panelists now, I want to shout out some of the people who are going to be on the second part of the panel. Mama Kinsey Henry, who represents Cobra. Can y'all give her a round of applause? She's going to be speaking. Pastor Ted Sutton, who was before me, he's going to be speaking on the panel. Yes. Give him a round of applause. Mr. Cheeks, John Cheeks, is going to be on the panel. Sister Jackie Johnson will be on the panel. All right. So to get into it, the first person that I want to introduce on the panel is Mr. Attorney Donald Temple, who's on the far left here. So this is definitely an attorney after my own heart because he's been practicing for a number of years. He's based in D.C. and Maryland. He practices in civil rights and human rights. He also does employment discrimination, police misconduct, estate disputes, and commercial and civil trial and appellate litigation. In 1997, you may know him because he was the one that coined the term consumer racism and secured $1 million $1 million verdict against Eddie Bauer in the United States District Court of Maryland. So his practice encompasses police misconduct cases in Prince George's County to help end aggressive police dog biting cases. And then also in 2016, he won a $1.7 million whistleblower jury verdict in the United States District Court for the District of Columbia against the D.C. Office of the Chief Financial Officer. So without further ado, Attorney Don Temple, I'm going to give you the floor for 5 minutes.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I want to just take a moment of silence to acknowledge not one generation, not two generations, not three generations, not four generations, not five generations, not six generations, not seven generations, not 8 generations, not 9 generations, not 10 generations, not 11 generations, not 12 generations, not 13 generations, not 14 generations, not 15 generations, but 16 to 20 generations of people of African descent who contributed to the development of this country without a single right. So we take a moment of silence. My name is Donald Temple, and I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that I am from the Montague family in Virginia. Our knowledge in our family only goes back to James Montague and Martha Robinson Montague and their 4 children. We only know that they were slaves because in our ancestral history research, we went back to a point where we could not gather documents, but we were able to follow the over 500 descendants of these slaves, then slave children throughout the United States. I'm going to compartmentalize my presentation in this way. The issue of reparations, with all of its fervor, to the extent that we are talking about a government objective, commands us making a case for a national justification for reparations. Now, that case is twofold. It's a substantive case on one hand, and then it is a procedural case on the other. I submit to you today that the question is a dated, antiquated question. The question of reparations is really an 1865 question, not a 2019 question. There are two, I can't begin, as the brother attempted to do, to give you the anecdotes, the historical anecdotes and justifications. There is a publication in A Matter of Color by Alien Hickenbottom, which outlines very carefully the laws that were in place throughout the southern states. But what I will do, to speak to the death of this nefarious and brutal institution, in one paragraph, and it's timely, in 1852, in Rochester, New York, Frederick Douglass said this in his speech about the meaning of the 4th of July. And he captured the institution of slavery in a way that I have never seen. He said, "What am I to argue that it is wrong to make men brutes, to rob them of their liberty, to work them without wages, to keep them ignorant of their relations to their fellow men, to beat them with sticks, to flay their flesh with the lash, to load their limbs with iron, to hunt them with dogs, to sell them at auction, to sunder their families, to knock out their teeth, to burn their flesh, to starve them into obedience and submission to their masters? Must I argue that a system thus marked with blood and stained with pollution is wrong? No, I will not." That's one component of it. When we talk about this institution and its implications throughout our country, historically, people get chills in different directions about it. I did some thinking just to try to feel out what this issue means and how it benefited so many people who don't look like us, and in particular, in the southern states, but not only the southern states, what it did for the American economy.
Yes. Tell the truth.
And in particular, on this question, the leading proponents of reparations should be the United States senators.
That's right.
From North Carolina and Mississippi and Louisiana and Alabama
Yes,
and Texas and Florida.
Teach.
But here's a concrete reason why. Hypothetical no. Slave owner X owns 100 slaves. In the course of a week, 100 slaves generate per slave 60 hours. 100 times 60 is 6,000 hours a week. 6,000 hours a week. Let's be a little bit generous. Times 50 for purposes of our math. 6,000 times 50 is how much? 6,000 times 50 is 300,000 hours. One slave plantation, one owner is generating 300,000 hours. Okay, I don't get it.
That's right.
I don't get it. Let's go to 1,000.
Come on.
1,000 times 300,000.
Yes, sir.
And the number goes to 300 million hours. I don't get it. I don't get it, Malik. I don't get it. I don't get it. Then let's go to 10,000. The census in 1850 said that there were 3.7 million slaves of African descent in the United States. Let's go to 10,000. 10,000 takes us to 1 million. Still conservative numbers.
Right.
1 million. 1 million times to 66,000 hours a week. Still a conservative number. Takes us to 3 billion hours of uncompensated labor.
Come on. Teach.
The uncompensated labor benefited and created levels of wealth, not only in the South. So when people tell us that we have an African American president, that does not take into consideration the trillions of dollars that not only the private landowners earned from the 3 billion hours, but the work and the benefits without taxes as part of this equation, the benefits to the government. We don't need a study to make a case for the history and implications of this institution. It's already been done.
That's right. That's right.
When we embrace that fact, and Elian Hickenbotham from Philadelphia, the late Elian Hickenbotham, put his life into documenting the implications of slavery. But we can't stop there because the legal basis goes a little deeper, and I refer you to Dred Scott v. Sanford. And in Scott v. Sanford, Justice Taney gave us the framework for why we should be a specialized minority, if at all, in this country as a category, and why we are distinct in terms of who we are and how we are treated. And this is what he says. The question is simply this: can a Negro whose ancestors were imported into the country and sold as slaves become a member of the political community formed and brought into existence by the Constitution of the United States? And then he said that includes the descendants of that class of Africans that were then in existence. What Taney did, by law, at the United States Supreme Court level, he projected that the descendants of people of African descent who were slaves would never become citizens or become a part of this country. By that, and in his writing, codifying all those bodies of laws that justified that particular level of subjugation. That's part one of that. When we go to Jim Crow and the post-slavery laws, that's another subject that I don't have enough time to speak about. And what I want to say is this, in closing. It's really, for us, we can't afford people to really talk about the why, because we know the why. And we have to figure out a way to talk about the how.
That's right.
And what the how means. And that means that we're going to debate and differ, and we're going to have to be strategic about how we move this issue and where we move it. Let me underscore this. We're at a place in this space in history and time with people in government at very high levels whose decision making will affect generations unborn.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
That's the truth.
That's right.
I practice law in these courts, and I submit to you that one of the number one issues that we face, and people know it, are who are sitting as the judges in this court. And so as we examine this issue, I believe that we have to be strategic. I'm glad to see my sister Audra here and the work that the National Conference of Black Lawyers is doing on the issue and COBRA, which is not new, it's historic.
Yes, sir.
And so I think we've come to a place where, notwithstanding how we see the issue and how we frame the issue, that within the framework of the how, the strategy, that we'll figure out a way, because as much as we think it is a Black American issue, it is an American issue. Okay? And it is our job to make sure this country knows how it has benefited
That's right.
from this history and how miraculous it is. How miraculous it is that we are here today having experienced that history and to have achieved what we have achieved. Thank you.
So, thank you, Attorney Temple. Next up, we have Dr. Leonard Jeffries. There's so much that can be said about Dr. Jeffries. He's like a master teacher. He studied under Dr. John Henry Clark and Dr. Yosef Ben Yakinen. And he's just like a historian, art educator, my elder, highly respected. And also to note, if it wasn't for Dr. Jeffries, there would not be no roots.
All right.
All right.
So without further ado, Dr. Jeffries.
Hotep family,
Hotep.
Assalamu alaikum family,
Walaikum salam.
Black Power family.
Black Power.
It is certainly a pleasure to join all of you at this historic occasion. And as you know, history is something we have to master. We have learned his story. If you got a degree from Harvard, his story. Yale, his story. Columbia University, where I got 2 degrees, his story. Georgetown, his story. But we have to be about history. So I'm glad that we've had this occasion. We have to congratulate our leader, outstanding attorney, Malik Zulu Shabazz. Let's give him an acknowledgement. And those that have supported him and the great work he's doing. We are at an important historical point. We've been there before, and we've made some progress. But because we didn't have the systems analysis we needed, we got pushed back for lack of knowledge.
That's right.
Now we're coming at it again. And then I rise, and we rise. And this is our historical and very important point. Brother, good to see you. All right. We have our Nigerian in the house, our connection to the Oni of Ife to Yoruba civilization.
Yes.
He said he would be here,
Ashe.
and he's here. This is an African in America story. This is an American story. But this is a global story. This is a universal and cosmic story. So we have to understand how serious it is. So I've been given an impossible task. My brother Malik Zulu said we have to, your usual thing of following Dr. Clark's instruction. You give a 30 or 40 minute introduction, and then you give a 3 to 4 hour blast and knock them on their But that's not going to happen today. But I couldn't go anywhere without my weapons of mass destruction of the systems of white supremacy that we have to live with. And honorary whites who have been brought into the system, now they're coming from Asia, all over East Asia, West Asia, Far Asia. And they're coming from, unfortunately, the Middle East. Honorary whiteness is something that we have to be about and you can do it with the documents. I brought this just in case somebody doubted me.
All right.
This is one volume. Documents illustrative of the slave trade to America. Elizabeth Donnan. This is volume 2 on the 18th century. There's a volume 1 on the 14th, the beginning of enslavement. These are the documents. These are the live letters. You can read it, you can see it, you can feel it. You can feel the correspondence between those who are funding the shipping, those who have made contacts with the various agencies. You can see the letters that they're sending to Cape Coast and Elmina and Goree. It comes alive. History is alive. You can see our ancestors being squeezed into the hold of ships, and you can see at the end of it all, death and destruction for Africans and profiteering for all of those Europeans and others involved. So we have to nail down the American component because it's key and crucial. But what are you going to do? Leave the Brazilian component alone?
No, sir.
What are you going to do? Leave all of the islands of the West Indies alone? It's a system. And unless you understand that, we can't go but so far. So I want to show you some of the weapons of mass destruction. I got the big ones here. You know, this will knock you out with this information. So you all have a lot of responsibility. Howard, we got to do something special in terms of the documentation and the understanding. We had to have all of our great centers, think tanks, that we can start pulling this information together. Put aside those conflicts that I did this first or this organization was first
Yes.
and you stole this
Come
from
on,
me.
Doc.
Or we have to define it. We've all been defined in the wrong way. We're African people.
That's right.
No matter how you can speak French. Je parle très bien le français, presque comme le français. En effet, mes études de doctorat étaient faites dans la langue française. Speaking French don't make me a Frenchman.
Yes, sir.
My roots are here, Virginia and Georgia. And we have to understand what roots is all about. In fact, we've got to do I have to do a special study on Alex Haley's roots because I had a $500,000 grant to support him. And if you knew what happened in the roots process, it would blow your mind. We can't deal with it here, but I'll be damned if I ain't going to deal with it when the right time comes, and the right time has arrived.
All right.
We need as much support as we can pull together to work together. Individual scholars can't do it. Individual institutions are not enough. Some successful movements, even in COBRA, has to be expanded universally. So there's an COBRA process that's taking place all over the East United States, but every island in the Caribbean. Even in Canada, you got to go to Africville in Nova Scotia to see an extension of the enslavement process. And I did an article on that at the anniversary of 1976, dealing with Lord Dunmore. And if you don't know Lord Dunmore, then you don't know the American Revolution process. Lord Dunmore decreed in 1775 the proclamation in Virginia. The Africans who joined in fighting against the enslavers would have their freedom. And so the Dunmore Proclamation has to be put up against the Declaration of Independence, which occurred the year before. You got to compare Lord Dunmore and his reasons, the governor of Virginia, and Thomas Jefferson and his reasons for the Declaration of Independence. This comparative analysis is what we need. Now you got it taking place down in the museum there. A great drama. Why the hell is Thomas Jefferson in the middle of the National Memorial? He needs to be there, but he ain't there by himself. Not right near him is somebody called Benjamin Banneker, making his claim on Jefferson. Got his document, his proclamation against Jefferson, got his copy of his almanac, got his work in studying the movement of the. But he also is a founding father because he contributed to laying out Washington, D.C., which has to be seen as an African contribution to the so-called New World process. And centering it in Washington, D.C. is the Washington Monument that doesn't have a damn thing to do with George Washington. It's stolen history. That's a Tekken. In Egypt, before the great temples, you have the symbol of rebirth and resurrection. It's good that it is in Washington, D.C., because this has to be the basis for our research and resurrection and renaissance, reclaiming our history.
Yes, sir.
So don't stop with to a few of the scholars like myself and Dr. Ray Wimbush and Dr. Murphy Asante, Dr. Carr, our great sisters in their work, Marimba
Ashe.
our work, Dr. Rawson. Let's go to the West Indies.
Exactly.
Let's snatch a brother
Exactly.
from the island of Tobago, the twin republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Study him! Capitalism and slavery, a concept that you have to have. If you don't see the link between capitalism and slavery, you miss the whole process that we want to deal with. Eric Williams, his PhD dissertation in English, linking capitalism and slavery, not with African inferiority, not with lack of African humanity, but the link between the processes of industrial capitalism, agricultural capitalism, insurance, market capitalism. This brother's work was so powerful, and he taught at Howard, had his base in the Caribbean. When he took over the nation of the Caribbean, he had to ban his own work. It was too rough. He got to run a nation. He got to deal with the capitalist system. And he had to ban his own work. But he took the PhD, and he wanted to give some knowledge to you and me who didn't have his deep knowledge. So he came up with From Columbus to Castro. So when you see his PhD work paired with his work for the general public, Columbus to Castro, his partner Walter Rodney did the same thing. PhD on the slavery in the Upper Guinea coast. But he came up with a general work, how Europe underdeveloped Africa. You play with this brother's history, you deal the same thing with Du Bois. Du Bois' first PhD from Harvard. What was it? The suppression of the slave trade. And then he went on with the other great works. This family of scholarship, wedded to your movement and understanding, gives us the victory. I'm going to end it with this, because my brother has put a little something in front of me, but I should have. Look, the black man's burden.
Yeah.
Case set.
We usually think of the white man's burden. Basil Davidson,
Yeah.
one of the greatest of the white scholars who
That's
put
right.
our history together,
That's right.
talking about his life and how he got involved in Africa in 1941, and that transformed his life. In the 40s, 1945, because the systems analysis says the change that we are in now comes from the laying down of a 50-year turning point of history. 1945 was the culmination of that. 1945 to 1995, when we were standing here in Washington with 1 million or 2 of us before the Washington Monument with our great minister, Farrakhan, leading our way. 1945 is a 50-year turning point of history in our favor. If we look through history, I usually use 3 50-year turning points of history. 19 BC, 1400 to 1300, you have what they call a 50-year turning point of history, represented by the 18th dynasty in Egypt. That great dynasty of the Pharaoh Akhenaten and his mother Queen T and Amenhotep III. And then they brought in Nefertiti to be a part of it, and then popping out of the womb was King Tut. We need to study that dynasty, not in terms of individuals and
Right.
gold masks and trinkets and whatnot. What was the revolutionary process there when Akhenaten came up with the concept we need to leave the city of 100 gates and go upriver, go toward the delta and create a new city of God? That's the philosophy of Akhenaten. But that was also the philosophy after 1945 of Nkrumah, a new city, and of Ufot Blunny, a new city, of Sekou Touré, a Cité État. There was a whole consciousness of our people moving into this new nationalism and this new nations to create something special. But all of it was polluted by this capitalist exploitation and this greed and this domination of our mind. But all that's changed, and I'm leaving you with it. We're on a victorious path.
Yes, we are.
If we follow Frederick Douglass' path and understand there is no progress without struggle. Those who profess the favorite freedom yet deprecate agitation are men who want the crops without plowing up the ground. They want the rain without the thunder and lightning. They want the ocean without the awful roar of its many waters. This struggle may be a moral one, but it may be a physical one. But it must be a struggle. Why? Because power concedes nothing without demand. It never did, it never will. So brothers and sisters, let's stand powerfully together on the world stage. Now you see how tall he is. If I didn't get off the stage, he might just pull my coat.
We're going to have plenty of questions in just a moment. Hey, give him another hand, please.
There's no following up to that. Like this is why we say it's a pillar of information and knowledge in the community. Dr. Jeffries, give him one more hand. So next up, now this is a heavyweight panel, y'all. So next up we have Dr. Mustafa Ansari. He founded the American Institute of Human Rights, now known as the Afro-Descendant Institute of Human Rights, where he teaches the UN Human Rights Defenders. He's a trustee of the Bosnian genocide case, where he gained an expertise in war and peace issues, an international lawyer, you all. Give it up for Dr. Mustafa Ansari.
Greetings, family.
Greetings.
I'm so delighted to be here and to greet everyone here with peace and blessings, and also to acknowledge all of the ancestors that are in the room with us right now. All of those 20 generations that go back all the time to the beginning in 1492. And I like to say that there's two catalysts for us to look at. And I'm going to bring you into the mind of an international lawyer for about 5 minutes. So I'm going to talk about the how and the who owes us.
And our ancestors helped to
The how we're going to do this is by looking at the rule of law of all the laws of nations. Reparations has been defined. It's been defined in the UN Declaration on the basic rights of people who have been victims in crimes against humanity and harms. It's already been defined. There's about 20 different types of reparations. I'm going to talk about the main 4, and you can put some of those into that. Is restitution. Restitution is a heavy one, so let me just start. Restitution, compensation, rehabilitation, and a guarantee of non-repetition. Those are the 4 main terms of reparations. Restitution is a heavy one because we talked about, and one of my colleagues who went to the same law school, Donald Temple, talked about the millions of hours of labor. Labor is not free. The millions of hours of labor that it costs to build this superpower. This superpower owes us what? According to the rule of law, restitution is a gains-based remedy. That means all the things that the United States gained because of our labor has to come back to us. So what did we build? We built a superpower. So what is our restitution? That means that we should become a nation, a superpower within a superpower. We built this superpower, and that gain was an illegal gain based upon illegal gotten goods, illegal gotten labor, illegal gotten murderous and treachery.
Teach.
So it's a gains-based remedy. Now, the remedy has to be under international law. It should be resolved in a way that would cause minimal disruption of the working of the state, while at the same time repairing the people who has been damaged. So how can we effect reparations? The first thing that you give to a man who has been enslaved, or a man who's enslaved and colonized, is his liberty. The first thing that we are entitled to is our liberty, just by giving us our liberty. So we want to test, because recently we rejoined in COBRA with their approach to go to Congress for a study. And we want to add to that. We want to put fire to that. We want to have enabling legislation with that. The enabling legislation is to test Congress. Is 4 things we want to test them with. We want to test them with status recognition. We want to be recognized for who we are. That recognition of status puts us into the category of people. Now we have a juridical personality. We can bring our claims anywhere in the international world because now we are a people. Right now we're not a people. The American law has made us individuals, have not made it. We can't even bring this action as a collective action because we're not a collective. So the first thing that we need to be is a collective. That'll allow us to be able to answer all those silly questions. Well, how are you going to tell who's going to get reparations, and how are you going to distribute it? Because we have a parliament. We have a parliament of our people that have been recognized not only by you but by the other countries of the world. So status is a threshold process. So along with HR 40, we have proposed HR 41. HR 41 is a status bill. It allows us to become a collective. That takes away the argument about who's going to get reparations because it's up to us to decide who is entitled to reparations. It's up to us to decide and craft the programs to heal us. We're in terrible shape right now. In fact, we have to do this right away because by 2023 we will have a net worth of 0. We will have returned back to a slavery state. So we have to do this now. So we're going to put Congress, and I hate to use these words, but it's the truth. We're going to put them on a short leash. The leash may be 6 months. You have to act within 6 months because if you don't, we're going to act. We're going to act in the streets. We're going to act everywhere that we can get in order to make this happen. Our suggestion. Every man, woman, and child has to act. From the age of 7 years old, we have to teach a 7-year-old child who he is and how and what he deserves and his reparations. Every man, woman, and child has to throw a punch in this struggle because at the legal end of it, we can act. We can get your judgments. It's not difficult. The United States has already admitted guilt. They've already apologized. They already have confessed. That's not even a private issue. Our issue is now let's come to the table and talk. So now number 2 is HR 42. We want $100 million to put up election apparatuses so that we can elect our identity. Who are we? Are we Afro-descendants? Are we Afro-Americans? Are we just want to be Americans? What kind of status? This was not given to us in 1865. So 1865 is a time when they just let us loose and say, we're going to subsume you into our jurisdiction. That's an act of war. You cannot subsume a people into your jurisdiction. That's an act of war. We have been at war with these people since inception, but especially since 1865 because they didn't give us a choice. When they did give us a choice, our ministers said, 18 ministers said, we'd rather be independent because the enmity that is drawn between your people and our people will not allow us to live together. And it's true. We cannot live under their authority anymore. That's reparations. To move from this status to a status where we are independent is reparations. That's 40% of reparations because why? We live in a superpower that we built and our economy is $1.4 trillion a year that we can't grasp because we're not a collective. We can't heal our people because we're not a collective.
That's
we can't
right.
police our people. We can't educate our children because we're not a collective. We should be in charge of school. We should be in charge of the police. We should be in charge of everything that involves our people. Anytime that we allow that other man to be in control of us is a problem.
That's
He
right.
should never be in control. That's reparations. The first thing that we want is liberty, and that's the first thing under the Declaration, the UN Declaration, is liberty. So we want to test the Congress with HR 40. We're going to give it to the Black Congressional Congress. We're going to give it to Sheila Lee Jackson because we've already written it. We've already written HR 41, the $100 million electoral apparatus bill. We've already written HR 45, which is a recovery act because we're in such a critical position right now that we don't have time to wait for them to act. We just don't have that time. So we're asking for $2 billion right now for emergency services because our people in these cities and in the Mississippi Delta are living like they're in the third world.
That's right.
We don't have them. We're living paycheck to paycheck and we should be in charge of this country. So we want to test Congress. $2 billion is nothing. The figures that Donald Temple came up with was in the trillions. And we prognosticate that our recovery is in the $30 to $50 trillion range, or maybe more. We're not sure yet until we put our economists on it. But $2 billion that we're asking in H.R. 42 is nothing. So we want to test Congress, and Congress has to give us a show of good faith. If they do not put the $100 million on the table within 6 months, they don't talk about it seriously within 6 months. They just slough it off. If Mitch McConnell or whoever it is, Donald Trump, that's interesting. If he fluffs us off, then we go to number 2, because anytime that anything has ever happened in this country, anything in the world, it has become by demand. So we have to get on the streets from the age of 7 years old. We have to get out there. We have to fight. This is going to have to go to the point of civil disobedience.
Listen, that's right.
It's going to have to go there. Because if it goes there, what we'll do with you, we'll bring you into an emerging state, and we'll get recognition, and we'll get funds from the rest of the countries in the world to make this happen, because we deserve it. Thank you very much.
Let's give it up again for Dr. Mustafa Ansari. All right, we're going to go ahead and continue with the program. My name is Dr. Amy Jenkins. I am the chair of the Movement for Black Power. Are we fired up yet?
Yes.
Yes. Are we ready for true liberation?
Yes.
Black Power.
Black Power.
And you know, one thing I want to say is that when people are sitting up here writing and showing, putting it on their phone, that means you're motivated. You know, this forum is not just about coming here to listen. Those who really want the message and really want reparations done today, you're writing about it. You're figuring out a game plan. This is what this is about. It's about strategy. You know, for what we had previously, it's just been talk. But right now, we need to have a little bit more than talk. We need to have some action and some action plans. And I love to see this happening with our people. Black Power?
Black Power.
Black Power. So we're going to go ahead and continue it, because with reparations, we can't just do this on policy alone. We can't just do it with all talk. We got to have the legal minds in this, all right?
That's right.
So one of the things, like we heard from attorney Mustafa Ansari, we also have to hear from other legal minds. We heard from attorney Talib Saber, but it's so important that we continue with it. But not only that, we got to have someone who really, really, really understands the law, right? And we need someone who really is going to break this down beyond a measure where we can't even, pretty much for the ordinary man, we may not be able to comprehend every segment of it. But I tell you what, we have somebody that's going to do that for you, because Attorney Malik Zulu Shabazz is not only an attorney from Black Lawyers for Justice, but when I say a black lawyer, I'm talking about a strong fist black lawyer.
Come on.
All right, Black Power?
Black Power.
You know, see, this is the thing we don't understand. We got a lot of attorneys in the industry.
Come on.
But every attorney ain't working for your interests.
That's right.
All right, Black Power?
Black
But we
Power.
got some people that are trained and that are seasoned. All right, seasoned in the fight and the war for their people. And Attorney Malik Zulu Shabazz, that is exactly what he does. This brother works day in and day out for the people. I cry tears for the sweat. Reparations forever. Black Power?
Black Power.
Attorney Malik Zulu Shabazz.
Come on, y'all.
All right, let's give Dr. Amy Jenkins a strong hand. Please. Let's give attorney and Dr. Mustafa Ansari a strong hand for his presentation. Let's give a young fiery attorney, Talib Saber, a strong hand for his participation in this. Let's give our veteran civil rights, human rights, freedom fighter, Donald Temple, attorney, a strong hand. Let's give our master teacher, Dr. Leonard Jeffries, a strong hand.
Black Power.
We got representatives from the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America, in Cobra. Let's give them a strong hand here. From the Church of God in Christ and People Can Change Ministries, representing Christian family who supports reparations, Pastor Ted Sutton is here.
Yes.
All right.
We have Miss Jackie Johnson from Sister and Miss Jackie Johnson from Profile Africa, who's connected with the African Union, who is watching here today. Let's give her a hand. We have Mr. John Cheeks for the American Recovery Act, a form of reparations. He's here. You'll hear from them shortly. Brother Dashan Farad, the great journalist, and others, and most importantly, you who are here in this audience and those who are here watching. Again, my name is Malik Shabazz, Malik Zulu Shabazz, and we got to thank the new Black Panther Party.
Yes, sir. Black Power.
We have to thank the new Black Panther Party for securing us. And we thank the chairman of the new Black Panther Party, my successor in that position, Chairman Hashim Nzinga. Our thoughts and prayers are with him in this hour. Trust me, they're going to come right in handy as we move towards Mitch McConnell's doorstep this evening. We'll talk about that in a few moments. Is that Greg Carr? We got the great professor from Howard University, my alma mater, Professor Carr. Give him a hand. We got to have you say something when we open up. When we're just here, brother. Love you. All right, let's get down to business. I won't be long, but I must be strong because I want to open up. Allow this panel to be asked questions and then to include our others in this educational forum and town hall meeting. Such an important time, more than an event. More than an event today, this is a program of strategic necessity. A program of strategic, give us a minute, I'll call you first, just give us a minute. Brother Hebrew Israel. A program and a strategic meeting whose time has come.
Yes.
I want to start off by thanking Queen Mother Moore.
Yes.
I want to thank Mario Badelli. I want to thank all of those legends who fought for this policy, who fought for reparations when it wasn't popular, who have fought, labored, organized in the darkest of times. And now that this issue is getting greater light, I want to say that we must respect and appreciate our elders. This is nothing new that is coming about today. We're happy to try to take this a step further. Sister Aju Ayatoro, National Conference of Black Lawyers, my honor to see you and others. In the book of Genesis, in the 15th chapter and the 13th verse, it is written that God promises Abram, know of a surety that thy seed would be strangers in a land that is not their own.
All right.
And they, talking about us, they shall serve them, and they shall afflict them for 400 years.
Listen.
And after that time that they have served, the book talking says, I, God, will come to judge that nation that they have served. We first must establish that no other people in the annals of time of the history of the planet Earth, we can find no other people that have been in bondage for 400 years under actual slavery other than the black people of the Western Hemisphere. There are no other people
That's right.
that have been in bondage for over 400 years but us. And we are the fulfillers of that scripture. Reparations being talked about everywhere now.
Yes.
Reparations on CNN, reparations on MSNBC, reparations being talked about in circles and quarters that never have before. Is this by man's proclamation, or is this coming from a higher source?
Yeah.
Does the discussion of reparations come from Cory Booker? Does it come from Kamala Harris?
No, sir.
Or is there something higher that is moving in the waters amongst our people, all of them?
Yeah.
All of them, that is bringing us to a higher threshold in this hour. First thing I want to say is reparations is nothing to play with.
Come on.
That this is not a hot subject matter. This is not something temporary. This is not something that's going to be, that should be talked about, met about on the agenda for 2019, and it might go another direction in 2020, not to be heard from in 2021. This is much too serious to play with. We're talking about our lives.
That's right.
We're talking about a fact that a permanent underclass, amongst our people has developed where this huge and tremendous wealth gap may never, ever, 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 ever be closed. Well, what our people have and what they need to survive as dignified human beings with human rights, that if we don't act now, that these gaps, these major issues that we have, that they would never ever be systematically cured. H.R. 40, House Resolution proposing the study of reparations. And on June 19th, how many were in Congress? On June 19th, we were at Congress for a historic hearing. And I want to say that that historic hearing and process is a good start.
Yes.
It's a good start, but we can't stop at that. Now, I want to say this first, and I will say it, and I don't apologize for saying it. I like Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. I respect that black woman. Because we always say we want our elected officials to take a stand for us. We always say that we elect people and send them to government, but they don't represent our interests.
That's right.
And certainly reparations is a controversial issue. Reparations is an issue that is not guaranteed to get you reelected in your jurisdiction. So because of her pioneering stance, even if everything she does is not to our liking, every witness that she may call in the hearing is not specifically to our liking, still we want to say that we support a black woman who is under death threats and all kind of threats right now for raising this timely issue and helping to put these bills and legislation before Congress. Now, so that's just a start. Our suffering is not an issue to be played with. We're here on the eve of election 2020. And part of this momentum comes about because politicians who are running for office in 2020 have mentioned reparations. They have said that they support reparations. Even some that we're totally surprised at that would be in front of reparations, such as Senator Cory Booker. Now, I have to be honest with you. You may have a different opinion, but he's the least person that I would think would be behind pushing any form of reparations in the United States Senate is Cory Booker. Am I right?
That's right.
That's right.
Because Cory Booker has what? He supported Israel. He's a strong, as he says, he's a strident supporter of Israel and other causes that we are not in support of. However, we are talking about how this issue comes about. It comes about because he is a senator in the United States Senate and he's pushing H.R. 40 on the Senate floor. Now, election 2020. I say this is not an issue to be played with.
Right.
This is not something that some say that the Democratic Party is flouting reparations as a recruiting tool for votes. That the Democratic Party is not serious about reparations, but they're throwing out the idea of reparations to somehow ramp up the black vote in their efforts to overcome Donald Trump next fall. Yes. We want to warn the Democratic Party, and we want to warn any of our brothers and sisters in the Democratic Party. We don't know if that's true. We hope that that's not true. We hope that that's just something that people are saying that is not true. But we want to let the Democratic Party know that our people are not to be played with any longer.
That's right.
The Democratic Party has played with the black vote. The Democratic Party has misused our people. They have made us promises in the primaries, promises coming up to elections only to turn heels and to diss the loyal black voter electorate once that Democratic candidate or platform comes into office, and reparations is not an issue that we can play with. We're talking about our lives. We're talking about the lives of our grandmothers and our ancestors that were snuffed out and ruined. We're talking about something really that could never be compensated for.
That's right.
The level of humiliation,
Yes.
torture, and embarrassment that our mothers and our fathers and our grandmothers and our grandfathers suffered, you could never give me a damn check for that. I wouldn't accept a check for that. We're not to be played with.
That's right.
And you can't play with God's business.
That's right.
And God's people. I won't be long. I just want to throw these ideas out here. You say, I'm feeling the burn. I'm feeling the burn. Well, where is Bernie Sanders on reparations?
Against it.
I'm talking about those amongst us that backing Bernie Sanders. You're running out there flying the Bernie Sanders flag. Well, where is Bernie Sanders on reparations? Since he's so liberal, since he's so progressive, since he's such a democratic socialist,
Point it out.
where is he on an issue that's core to you if you're going to back him?
That's right.
Kamala Harris, senator. Now she gave a strong debate performance the other night. I mean, she's impressive in speech. She's aggressive. She's quick on her feet. We had to admit that in her performance at the Democratic debate the other night, Kamala Harris came out swinging.
Yes, sir.
However, upon further investigation into this particular candidate, first of all, we have to let's just go through all the positives, a few positives. She also has been on the record saying that she supports the idea of reparations. She's also a contributor to this conversation that has ramped up the momentum around this issue, and Kamala Harris is rising in the polls. We want to say to Ms. Harris, we understand we appreciate what you're doing. And as a black woman, we want you to do well. However, your history as a prosecutor raises many questions that we must have answers before we can get behind you.
Yes, that's right.
And your speech at AIPAC,
Yes.
the Jewish lobby or the Zionist lobby, your speech at AIPAC, which chose to compare our specific plight and our cause with the Zionists,
Yeah, that's right.
more so than with the Palestinians and others, or otherwise, Ms. Senator Harris pledging loyalty to Israel certainly worries us, because that's going to present a contradiction if you're serious about reparations.
That's right.
Hello? I don't know if my panelists will agree with me, fellow panelists would agree with me, but I say a hard line need to be held. I say no reparations, no vote.
That's right. Right. Yes, sir.
You're not for reparations for my people, I'm not going to be a whore for your vote any longer.
That's right.
But you promising me some minority set-aside, so a small business plan or packet, or like Joe Biden, try to make us just drive us to vote for you out of fear for Donald Trump.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Biden.
Oh, segregation.
Dancing back and forth with the Confederate flag and whatever his strategy is. Oh, Biden. Biden can't be trusted.
That's right.
Biden is not only against reparations, he seems to be against most of what we believe in upon further investigation into his history and background.
Yes.
Mitch McConnell, as I conclude, Senator Mitch McConnell. There's a rhyme with that, I won't say it. Because I want to keep it all clean and dignified.
Right.
But you know where I was headed.
Sorry.
That's how he acts. And that's why he says, not only he's a leading person in the Senate with influence over this bill if it happens to come before the United States Senate. Here's McConnell says that the election of Barack Obama is a sufficient remedy for what our people have suffered for over 400 years. Now that would be an aberration. That would maybe seem to be an isolated comment. If we didn't know, it probably represented the mindset of much of white America. It represents the mindset of much of white America. Donald Trump is 25 Democratic Party candidates trying to compete against an almost uncontested Donald Trump. Why is Donald Trump uncontested? Why is the Democratic Party trying to take 25 people and find out can they elect one man, one person over the Democratic Party? Why are they so confused? Why is Donald Trump, with all of his errors, all of his mistakes, all of his racism, all of his arrogance, why is he odds-on favorite to win again? It's because that Donald Trump mindset, that white supremacist mindset is heavy entrenched in America right now. So you're up for a fight. You're up for a fight. You say you want reparations? You think us presenting at Congress some nice, compelling testimony, some nice documents, a nice argument, do you think that is going to convince the white man to voluntarily hand us over $17 trillion or more in damages? It's not going to come voluntarily. It's not going to come voluntarily. When Brown versus Board of Education, they said that repaired the damage in education, but it did not. We are still separate and we're still unequal. The 1964 Civil Rights Act was supposed to bring us equality in the political field, and that was supposed to equal the playing field. Did it equal the playing field? Now, in the 60s, those gains that we got, those civil rights gains and other gains beyond civil rights, they were fought, they were bled, they were died for, and they were even killed for. You had this country roiling like never before on civil rights issues. And the question is, what will you do on the most compelling human rights issue of your generation? In the 60s, Frederick Douglass correctly teaches us power concedes nothing without a demand. I argue today that nothing will be handed to us. Nobody is going to hand us reparations. Even though it's owed to us, nobody is going to give us, nobody's going to give you anything unless you force them to do it. Unless you put them in a position that they have no viable alternative but to do it. And we want to know, do you have the strength for that kind of fight in this hour? Otherwise, we're just playing here. Otherwise, we're having a nice discussion, and if the enemy changes the discussion, we'll be on to another discussion. Because too many people think we are people to be played with, and it's time to show the world that we are not a people to be played with. And this is the issue. To show them that we are not a people to be played with. No one is going to give us anything. We must have a united front. In Cobra, we must have a united front for reparations. The persons in government and politics that are pushing for reparations, we here at panelists at this forum, this coalition we're building, our contention is we must have a united front. Nation of Islam, who are listening, under Minister Louis Farrakhan, we must have a united front. Nation of Islam, under the Honorable Silas Muhammad, who has fought for this cause for a long, long time. We respect it. We must have a united front. ADOS, American descendant of slaves. We're some of that too. We must have a united front. No one is going to give us anything. In the civil rights movement, they had to go through Montgomery. 4 girls were blown up in the church in the South behind this cause, in Birmingham. Medgar Evers killed, martyred for this cause. Many martyred for this cause. Watts blew up. Detroit blew up. Cities across America went up in flame for equality and civil rights and the goals we fought for in the 60s and the 70s. Will we as a generation be allowed to escape with less?
Teach, brother.
That is my question in this hour. And as I leave you, Well, as I advocate again, we have to fight on a common front, as Minister Malcolm X teaches us. Malcolm X teaches that we must have a common front. We must repair all of the errors that allow us to be divided and manipulated by our former slave masters.
Yes.
We are partially in this condition because an enemy came to Africa and allowed us to be divided and manipulated against each other.
Yes, right.
We are still in this condition, thwarted from our ultimate aims and development, because we have allowed not only the enemy to divide us against each other, we have allowed competition. We have allowed jealousy.
Yes.
We have allowed envy.
That's right.
We have allowed pettiness.
Yes.
We have allowed triteness to creep in amongst our best amongst us and keep us divided.
That's right.
From the ultimate goal.
That's right.
And we are not going to let it happen in this hour. And I pledge not to let it happen. And so I say in this hour, for all of those who were drowned in the lakes, the rivers, brooks, and streams, for all of those bodies that are strewn at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean.
Yes, sir.
For all of the humiliation and the embarrassment, countless acts of humiliation, embarrassment, torture, and denial of opportunity that our people have suffered.
Yes.
I say, let us unite. Let us unite. Let's be ready to fight. And like Marcus Garvey said, up you mighty nation, you can accomplish what you will.
All right. Black Power.
Black Power.
Black Power.
The second part of your question, where's the money coming from? You guys say it's coming from Congress. Eventually, maybe it will be, but this is our alternative right now, what's on the table right now. If we choose to enter, and I want to go back to the Venn diagram, because there is an intersection between reparations and self-determination. If we choose self-determination, I'm going to tell you what the Palestinians get per year from the rest of the countries of the world. They get $6 billion for their infrastructure. We need infrastructure money right now. If we can't get Congress to move in the next 6 months, damn it, we have to go international. And we have to become a nation. Yes. We wasted $15 million votes on Hillary Clinton and her failed election. We wasted $16 million on President Obama. He didn't give us a doggone thing. We need 2 million declarations to say that we want to be an independent people. If you cannot do that, then you don't deserve reparations.
Right.
We have to be independent. We have to be under the authority of these people. If we do that, then we can obtain about 10 to 12 billions of dollars in the next year or so, more or less, from the other countries of the world, because we are in an emerging nation status. This puts leverage on the United States, because when they lose us, they lose credit rating, because we are an important part of cog of this country. So if 1 million of us decided to become a nation, they lose 1 million, they use billions and trillions, they use billions of dollars in economy. That's our leverage to make the United States come to the table. Should we pay taxes? If we decided not to pay taxes, that would also decrease their credit rating. We have to become a collective, because a collective nation inside this nation can only make those choices. We have to grow to that understanding. We have to get out of this relationship that's very abusive.
All right, let's give him a hand. I want to calm down. I'm gonna try to work some of our guests, and then I'm coming to you for follow-up. Dr. Jeffries and Attorney Saber. My sister queen from Incobra, Miss Kenneth Henry.
Yes.
Come on down, man, please. From Incobra, let's come here and take be a part of answering these questions. Amos Jones.
Yes.
We come to a moment. Attorney Amos Jones, local attorney here with us, and others. Come right here, Miss Kenneth. Yeah, come sit right here, please. All right. Let me pivot for a moment, and then I'll come right here. Well, go right ahead. State your name.
My name is...
Please, everybody, don't make it. I mean, we know y'all got strong statements to make. But I'm not starting another panel out on the line. Another one that will go on all day.
Thank you for this conference. My name is Kia Mir, and I'm from the Muhammad Speaks.
Yes.
I have two very quick questions. How would you describe the work of the Honorable Salis Muhammad at the UN in the fight for reparations? And second, could you address the significance of the term Afro-descendant, its authorship, and what it means to 250 million former slaves throughout the African diaspora?
All right, that's a good question. I could answer that fast.
Yes, sir.
But effective. I would say that I respect the work that the Honorable Salis Muhammad, who is the leader of the Lost Found Nation of Islam, has been doing on behalf of reparations and our people since August 21st, 1977. I have nothing but respect for him. I love him, and I would hope that a part of these movement that going forth as a part of this movement, that he would be in his proper place, because he's been a pioneer. When I first heard Mr. Muhammad in his Muhammad Speaks newspaper, who you represent, many years ago, stating that we're Afro-descendants, that hit my ear strange. But then when I went on international travels to meet our people in the Caribbean and South America, I get off the plane, I say, well, what do you all call yourselves? I'm in Colombia. They say, we're Afro-descendants, and so forth. So this is the accepted legal standard for our people in the Western Hemisphere, is the term Afro-descendants. I mean, of course, we're black culturally, originally, even politically. We're black. Others don't go for the black term. They say, well, I'm a Moor. They say, well, it's 100 names out there. I'm an Israelite. Everybody wants to be everything, but we're talking about legal status here.
Yes.
And the legal status here, we've advanced to the point where Afro-descendant is the legal terminology, the name that we're using on the international forum. And so we have to thank Mr. Muhammad for his pioneering work. He's been pioneering. All right, let me ask this quickly. Brother Tyler, and as young people, look like I saw some students come in here. And I want to ask you, as a young person, why would reparations interest, how do we get young people to accept and be involved in the reparations movement like they were in the civil rights and the Black Power movement?
Thank you. And first I want to say that this is my mentor. So just want to shout him out.
Black Power, Black Power.
Black Power.
With regards to that, getting the youth involved, I think that we have to just make it in a way in which we can feel like we want to participate. Oftentimes, there's a big divide between the elders and the youth as it relates to some of the things that we need to do as far as building a community. And I think that in order to get rid of those barriers, we have to have more conversation and more dialogue. We have to have, I know personally, going to law school and accruing all that debt, having reparations presented in a way that could address the education issue and set up institutions. And then also, to Bob's point beside me, because majority of us are working class people, then having the institutions set up in place to where we can have jobs, because a lot of youth are unemployed, so don't have jobs, and providing different types of training and things of the kind. So for us, I think Dr. Khalid Muhammad said, we're entertaining type of people, but also you have to deliver it in a way that's informational as well. So being able to present it to us in a way that we can participate, that it will affect it, we can actually see it, like the day-to-day, something thereafter, and then also just having us in certain positions so that we can feel like we're important, because a lot of times we don't feel like we're being heard.
That's right.
All right. We also have Morehouse. We have a couple of other colleges in here. Where you from?
My name is Baba Peter Joins. I represent Harold Hunter and Peter Joins Facts Incorporated.
Okay.
And we've done work with you at Howard University when we had to take over university.
Okay.
And right now I have students here in the Summer Youth Employment Program. This is part of their curriculum and their learning, and they have several questions that they want to ask about the reparations movement?
I'm going to come right to you all. You all, let's give the students a hand. Same thing. This program is a part of National Reparations Day, and I'm happy to say that there are activities going on in several cities right now.
Amen.
They're shutting down the Walmart in Denver, and that's courtesy to the new Black Panther Party.
Black Power.
They're having educational forums and seminars for this National Reparations Day #1. The second one will be October 16th of 2019. We're trying to get going here in terms of this part of the movement. All right, let's go further here. We're going to work our other panelists into the conversation. Here's our great historian,
Yes.
walking lexicon, Bob
Yeah.
Oduno here, Washington, D.C.
Yes,
Our
sir.
teacher.
Black Power.
First and foremost, giving honor to the Almighty God of all the worlds, giving honor to our noble ancestors, giving honor to our senior elders, those who are in the type as I am, a junior elder, and those who are under those elders. If it's okay, August body, I would like to stop here and defer to the questions of the young people. And I am not being gracious, it's because I'm a teacher. We need to hear from our young people now.
That's right. Black Power.
All right. Based on our elders' request, we'll take one question from the student section. We'll take a first question from the student section.
Go ahead, Captain. Captain, you want to ask a question?
If you can come up to the mic, it'd be great.
They embarrassed.
Don't be afraid. Come on up. Yeah, you can do it.
Hey.
Come on, we on time.
Come on, young lady. State your question loudly so we can hear it, please.
One of the questions that we had was, what can the youth do to stop slavery?
What can the youth do to stop slavery? What slavery are you talking about?
Say right here. You say, what can the youth do to stop ECO slavery?
Okay, you young. What slavery are you talking about? You talking about then, now? You talking about the effects of slavery?
Yeah.
You know I'm just sharpening you up here, right?
Right.
How old are you? You 14? You're a year older than my daughter. Young lady, let me ask, I think you could help me answer this question even better. Some of the things that you see in your generation, you may not know it or not, but they are the effects of slavery.
Yes.
When you see the hatred, when you see the violence, when you see the N-word, the nigger word,
People on the streets.
being treated routinely as a part of your daily existence, these are some of the vestiges of slavery.
That's right.
When you see us in a bad economic way, and in a bad way in general, in some parts of our community, certainly not all, these are some of the effects of slavery. So let me flip it on you. Let me ask you now, how do you think that young people could stop some of these activities that we know that they are tied to the hatred and discrimination against our people in slavery? How would you suggest that we could help young people to try to get over some of those activities which are tied to slavery?
I think that everybody just needs to play their part.
Okay. You willing to play your part? You ever watch videos of the civil rights movement? You ever seen some of them young people taking on water hoses? You ever seen some of them people just out in the street overturning society? You ever seen student walkouts? You ever seen whole schools worth of students just walk out school? You've been a part of one? There was a National Reparations Day too, and we asked all the students to take a stand for reparations and to take a stand for repairing ourselves of the damage of what we've been doing to ourselves, and we would walk out on a student walkout day. Is that something you would participate in? You would take a stand for that? We want you to stick around.
All right. That's right.
All right, let's do this. Dr. Jeffries. Dr. Jeffries. You got in trouble, stays in trouble, but he got in big trouble in the early 90s, pointing out the financial origins of parties and defendants to our enslavement. You touched landmines at that time, and from your academic position, a chair of the City University of New York, right? City University, City College of New York, chairman of Black Studies Department. He was viciously attacked by the mayor of New York.
That's right.
And key forces. I mean, some of his speeches, I went back and reviewed them. I mean, he was demonstrators everywhere. As many demonstrators as you've ever seen demonstrating on Minister Louis Farrakhan. They were on Dr. Jeffries. My question here, Dr. Jeffries, is the origin of the origin of our financial suffering. Those that have profited from our enslavement and our suffering. How should we deal with it? How should we deal with it? I mean, should we ramp up your previous efforts of identification? Are we in an identification phase, or should we even be going further in terms of those that have robbed us?
Excuse me, sister.
Well, you can come take this. You want to take this if you can.
Yeah, but if I
Go
do,
ahead.
I might take it over for the next.
All right, go right ahead.
Well, certainly, I want to thank all of you for joining our brother and his team in coming together at this historical moment. This is in addition to a whole lot of other things going on. I just spent the past week in Detroit with the Ancobra celebration. And of course, Mr. Farrakhan made a very strong statement. But also there was a celebration of a brother who had been a part of the Detroit community, but he left Detroit, went down to Jackson, Mississippi to be with Chokwe Lumumba. So we had not only the live activity, but we were paying respect to those who have given their life to the struggle. So that Lake Zulu has asked me to come up to deal with this question of the financing of enslavement and who profited. And that's something we need to have serious studies on. What we were dealing with was real, because most people don't realize that I didn't get started in this thing yesterday. I'm 82 and I ain't through.
All right now.
And so when we're talking about enslavement and the system of enslavement, it became an international phenomenon. Whole wars were fought before, whole nations were involved. So if we just want to talk about Thomas Jefferson and George Washington, we're going to be stuck in a hole. You have to go to the coast of West Africa, for example, and you'll see all along the coast of West Africa, from Gorée in Senegal, or even above Senegal and Saint-Louis, the basis for enslavement, the slave dungeons and fortifications. And all of the nations of Europe were involved, even those that you don't think could possibly be involved. The Danes certainly were involved. Yes, they were. They formed the Danish company in about 1637. The Dutch couldn't possibly be involved. The little tulip-growing wood-shoe wearing windmill pushing Dutch could not. They were some of the worst enslavers. And so the Dutch West Indian Company was formed in 1621. And then these Swedes did not want to get left out. Now you're talking about these Scandinavians that ain't supposed to be involved. The Swedes formed the Swedish African Company in 1649. And you have to see this linkage, this money, this wealth creation. And so all the groups were involved. Some people said we couldn't have been involved, we was oppressed. That was one of the big stories that got us in trouble, because we mentioned people who have used their oppression in order to get their reparations.
Right.
But don't want to talk about the collaboration with the oppressor. And that you can't hide from that. I have 50-something books, 53 books on the Jewish involvement in slavery. And 27 of them were written by Jews themselves.
Right,
so I wasn't hesitant on raising who was involved. If I can put Queen Elizabeth I in 1569 when she was hooked up with it, if I can put the Pope in 1493 when he divided up the world and gave one half of it to one Catholic nation called Spain and another half of it to another called Portugal. You have to be able to put the goods right at the foot of whoever was involved. And you just can't say Africans sold Africans. You're talking about a four-way process. The Europeans sat down and worked out their involvement.
That's right.
And if you were Jewish and had money and could be involved, you were invited in. If you were a Catholic and had money, you were invited in. If you were a Protestant and had money, you were invited in. If you were a noble, like Queen Elizabeth, you were invited in. We have to see the impact of the world devastating African peoples in a dehumanization. We can't be gentle with this. We can't worry about people's feelings. Put the damn popes that were involved, not just one. You had a papal bull of 1455, which said that you can enslave the infidels. And then when these Europeans started trying to get out of that icebox called Europe, and they started moving around the world trying to find where some sustenance could help them, then you got the Spanish nations and the Portuguese nations discovering all these ends. How can you discover people who have been living there? The discovery of Columbus and whatnot. We've got to redo the whole damn thing. It's not correct. You got founding fathers. We need to know all of the founding fathers' business. We know Thomas Jefferson because Sally Hemings told us the tale and the children that was involved there. But not only Thomas Jefferson, you got in Philadelphia, you got Ben Franklin.
That's right.
He couldn't have involved. Yes, he was.
A mad scientist.
He had people involved in his printing establishment and taking care of his home. If Benjamin Franklin couldn't be involved in this shit, you would know that all of them was involved. We need to look at all of the founding fathers and put a number after their name. Thomas Jefferson got a number after his name down in the museum. 609. He had 4 slave establishments, not just Monticello. Monticello was the masterpiece when he had mastered the process of dealing with enslavement. We got to take the drawers off Thomas and show that he ain't got the emperor don't have no clothes.
All right now.
So let's be serious about it. And of course they came at me. I'm one of the nicest guys in the world, but I have to deal with the truth. Why? Because when I did my family study after working with Alex Haley for 5 years, and they took Roots, the book, and all of this documentation that I have came because we set up a project to help Alex Haley get into the analysis of the system of slavery. Alice just wanted to put together a story, a linkage. We're talking about a system, that a wealth creation and institution building that the Europeans and everybody has been involved in and kept us locked down and locked out.
Come on.
That is coming off of us now. And all of those involved, we want to be able to show who they were, what churches they were involved in. So, look, it's time for us to feel good about this. Malik, we have to give you kudos now. You're looking good, you're trimming. But this is a sacred mission.
That's right.
This ain't nothing to get a check.
That's right.
They can't restore us with a check. When I was working with Alex Haley, and the white folks got a hold of me, as white folks do, because I was helping out Alex when they were filming Roots. He asked me to come down and join him since I had helped him with the book Roots. He wanted to help my help with the film. And white folks, after me correcting this and that, and Alex said, wait a minute, we got to go to the expert. And so Alex came to me and said, Dr. J, this and that. So we corrected so many things. White folks just got tired of the truth. They sat me down for lunch and said, Dr. Jeffries, we're glad you're here to help us out, but we want you to know that we bought the rights to the book Roots. We're under no obligation to deal with the truth of it. And you ought to know we certainly don't have to deal with the truth of your history as an African person. Now here I am, have worked with white folks, lived with white folks, ruled them, was the leader of them, and they look at me and say, we got you. This is 1976. I was devastated. PhD from Columbia University, master's from Columbia University. And before that, studying in Europe in French.
Come on.
None of that could I reach back for to restore me. But I'm a person who hangs in. So I was going to hang with Alex even though it was a painful thing. But finally they had, in Brunswick, Georgia, a warehouse where they had a cutaway of a slave ship. And Lou Gossett and myself and others are on the side watching this scene, a fantastic scene where you see the layers of the enslavement process. And it was a cutaway. It was almost as if we were rolling on the sea. It was so real. And so the head of the youth group, who was O.J. O.J. Simpson, he was the leader of the youth, and he was on the upper deck, and Kunta Kinte was on the lower deck, moaning and groaning. And the leader of the youth group said, Kunta Kinte, you have to be strong, because we may have to fight the white man and return to Mother Africa. And Lou Gossett to myself, we felt this was real. This was a drama that made some sense. And Green, the head of the African portion, ran out, said, stop! Cut! And we said, why are they cutting now? This is flowing. We don't want to deal with Mother Africa. And that just wiped me out. So from that point on, I was ready to get out of there. But Spirit said, don't go. Spirit said, make your way to your grandfather. I said, grandfather? The one in Virginia I know because I was born on his birthday. The one in Georgia I didn't know. So Spirit said, contact your ancestors, your aunties, and find out about your past. I call Aunt Bessie. I say, Aunt Bessie, tell me something about us. Where's your grandpa from? Where's my grandfather from? Where's your father from? She said, we from Ohio. I said, Aunt Bessie, ain't nobody from Ohio. We moved out of Georgia to Ohio. Where's your? And she got my drift. She said, your grandfather, my father, is buried in Midway Church Cemetery, Jasper County, Kelly, Georgia. And with that information, I left Alex Haley and the Roots, and I made my pilgrimage to rural Georgia. And when I got into the graveyard, there was the ancestor. The tallest tombstone in the graveyard, as high as this podium. In fact, it came up to my chest. And there was the graveyard. Jesse Jeffries, born in 1868 at the birth of the 14th Amendment. His brother Sam was born in 1865 at the 13th Amendment. And his wife, half white, was born in 1870. So those amendments that enabled us became a part of my personal experience. But then when I saw the tombstone, he had been born in 1868 at the birth of the first Klan, but the rise of the second Klan after 1915 with the birth of the nation movement took him out. He was murdered, lynched by the Klan in 1917, July 16th. But then in that cemetery, all of that pain that I was carrying was relieved when I saw this monument representing resurrection. I saw the twin pillars of masonry. He was the head of the Masonic Lodge. The church that he built, the school that they built is still there in Georgia.
Come on.
With the death and destruction and dehumanization, he was in the middle of the struggle, more human than any of the detractors. coming out of nothing into something, and left me with this power to allow me to go throughout the world and take on any struggle that there is.
That's right. Black power.
So that's what it's all about. The resurrection and the restoration of African peoples. And it's real, brothers and sisters.
Now you know what makes up a man like this, right? Yes. Give him a strong hand. We know what makes up an elder like that. That's right. Give him this fighting spirit.
That's right. Black power.
What do we want?
Reparations.
What do we want?
Reparations.
What do we want?
Reparations.
When do we want it?
Now.
How do we want it?
By any means necessary.
All right. Ain't no other way to want it.
All right.
All right. We're gonna move the ball here, and let me. I'm coming to Cobra. I'm coming to the great revolutionary journalist, Brother Dashawn Farad, who has joined us. Give us a round of applause. Dashawn Farad with his wits. But let me ask you this. I'm going to ask Pastor Ted Sutton a question. Then we come in here. We're going to come here. And we're going to work it. But let me ask this. Now, in some of these circles that talk about reparations, they say that the black church, it is accused sometimes, maybe wrongly, that the black church is not for reparations. The black church is not progressive on reparations. Pastor Ted Sutton, leader of People Can Change Ministries from Church of God in Christ, also in Maryland. What do you say about the black Christian involvement, the black church involvement, the black Christian perspective on this struggle for reparations? Do you have a comment on this? This is Pastor Ted Sutton of People Can Change Ministries in Baltimore.
Well, first, I must say, it's nothing but God that allowed me to be here on today.
Amen.
And this is what we're going to have to come back to. There's one God. See, I know that I come from a lineage where my father was organizer with Dr. King. My mother worked for Medgar Evers the same summer he was assassinated. But being that middle child that got caught up, I ended up having the opportunity to be with one of the roughest groups that came out of Baltimore, but then before I seen the light. And that's why I feel that I've said it before, that it's impossible to be a Christian and a coward at the same exact time.
All right now.
Either you're going to be a real coward and a fake Christian, or you're going to be a real Christian and a fake coward. But you can't be, it's like matter and antimatter. It can't occupy the same space.
Right.
And I say that because I look at myself, and so we're going to have to break down some of the barriers. We're going to have to, because we've had some culture vultures, and we've had some what I've called poverty pimps, who have actually used their platforms and in a way that wasn't beneficial to our communities. And so what we're going to have to do is actually get back to the rights and the real of what's, and it says real recognize real, but actually real recognize everything. And I say that because being known as Dr. Ted Sutton now, but also if anybody ever Googled Crazy Ted, my face would come up. So I was that person that you didn't want to see at the wrong time. My godfather was a man named Little Melvin Williams, the man from American Gangster, and a lot of people knew me as known as Crazy Ted, but I had a chance. See, the bad thing is, it's bad to not be blessed, but it's worse to be blessed and not know that you're blessed.
Yes. Good teaching, brother.
So I had the opportunity to just see another side. So I'm still gangster. I just changed sides.
That's right.
Yes, sir.
So what we're gonna have to do is break down these walls that has tried to divide us as a people. Meaning, when I say that, meaning that you know what, the Bloods, the Crips, the BGF, all of the brothers, we need these brothers too.
That's right.
And so we can't get so conscious That we wear the dashiki and say, oh, my brother, and then we look down at the brother that has his pants hanging down and the gold teeth and everything else, because those are some of the same brothers, and if you ever get them changed, they'll go some places that other church members will never go.
That's right.
So I look at myself in that same position. So when I see that, I have to also pray for some of my brothers, because I feel that some of them have lost some of their hope and some of their faith. And we have to let them know that your real strength comes in your faith.
That's right.
And so to me, when I used to leave out the house when I was a teenager, they would say, do you have your gun? And I'd be like, it's like my credit card, never leave home without it.
That's right.
But I see now that knowing what to fight and die for changes the way that you see life and how you see things now. So now I'm not worrying about no police officer pulling behind me.
That's right.
I'm not worrying about seeing my brother who I know is strapped because I can see the little bulge here. I know predators because I was a predator. But see, the thing is that it's going to take us to be bridge makers. See, you're going to have Lil Boo and Lil Day Day and Lil Black, and you're going to have somebody to come and get him because he's closer to the streets. And then you're going to have somebody to get him closer to me. And then I'm going to have to get somebody that gets him closer to brother. And then I'm going to have, and then he's going to have somebody that gets him closer to my brother. So it's like Meek Mill says, it's levels to this thing.
That's right.
So when I said that, I've always said, how can you expect for people to run the same race, but you start the starting gun for some people after the other people had already done 2 laps, and then you expect for them to have the opportunity to finish the race at the same time? That's good. So, I mean, and also on the other side, I mean, people talk about, well, I'm not voting for nobody until I have somebody to vote for. And I said, well, not me. I'm going to do something different. I said, even if I don't have somebody to vote for, I'm going to use my vote to vote against somebody.
That's right.
You better use your vote to vote against somebody. You may not have nobody that you like in this race, but you better make sure you know who you don't want in this race. And so I'm sharing that because I say that we need each other.
That's right.
Because we can't do anything until we get on the same page to even just agree that it's one thing that we're going to fight for. So I say that, and because I have always felt that education and health care should be something that we didn't have to pay for. That was off the muscle. Because see, when you start talking about just checks, you know somebody going to have a problem with it.
Right.
You already know that. And also somebody else is going to get that Cadillac. But I tell you one thing, the way that you change is that you change. And then you get the next person to change. And then, but it's going to come through teaching, but you can't teach them until you connect with them, and you can't connect with them until you learn to love them.
That's right.
So I would implore, and I would ask for some of my gangbangers. I would ask for some of my brothers who are in the church and in the mosque to say that we're going to love people past their mess. And to show them that we can come together to make a difference. Thank you.
Let's give him a hand. Pull him a seat here next to Donald Trump, brother girl. Pull him a seat here right on the corner. Let's give Pastor Ted Sutton a strong hand. We are after building a united front. We are trying our best to build a united front for this cause. Now let's talk about action. Hey, Elijah. Now let's talk about some action. I'm coming here. Let me say this. Economic sanctions are weapons of war. Economic sanctions are used by the United States government many times immorally and unlawfully to punish nations whom America or whoever's the head of the American government happens to disagree with. Economic sanctions are a weapon of war against Cuba. Economic sanctions have been a method of warfare against Iran, a method of warfare currently against Venezuela.
Yes, sir.
And what I contend to you today is that what's good for the goose is good for the gander.
Good point.
What I'm here to tell us is, because some of my even more radical suggestions I will not put on the table today, because I don't want to over-radicalize the conversation. I see my chief of staff, Sister Renee, here. We wouldn't be here without Sister Renee Brooks. Love you, sister. We wouldn't even be here without you. Everywhere the black man is doing something strong, you better believe the black woman is all the way behind. All right? So we're going to hear from Cobra next. But I want to say this. We have to use, and we must use, economic sanctions as a method to force reparations. This is something that is viable. These are weapons that are legitimate, that are within our hands. There are many, many companies that are operating in America that have direct ties to slavery.
Amen.
And there's some that don't, and I say, so what? Got to get them too. Are you listening to me?
Yes, sir.
Economic sanctions is a proposal, is a recommendation that I'm putting on the table right now, and that we're recruiting for right now. I give out a website and a number right now. This is a thrust of a plan of action.
Yes, sir.
We have to make them feel the pain. Lehman Brothers,
Yes.
hands, according to what we have researched, hands dripping in the bloody slave trade.
Yes.
Old American Express,
Lords of London.
American Express, according to what we have read and researched, roots in the slave trade and profits from the slave trade. Aetna, roots in the slave trade. I'm reading here, according to my report from our research department, even CVS.
Yes, sir.
And damn, it's going to put some crunch on you now. CVS has roots and ties to the slave trade. Wachovia, Wells Fargo.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
We got to shut them down.
That's right.
We got to do what Dr. King was talking about before his assassination. And don't get scared, may have been a reason why he was assassinated. Because Dr. King stopped talking about mere integration and started talking about economic justice and using his influence over a mass movement to force that justice.
That's right. That's right.
We have to ask ourselves, are we ready for these kind of fights? Again, Wachovia, Wells Fargo, First Union Corporation, First Atlanta Bank, J.P. Morgan,
Yes.
Brown University, and you know Georgetown University right around here, all tied up in the slave trade. Say they're going to put a $25 student tax. Was it $25 or cents? It was something low. New York Life, Norfolk Southern,
CSX.
Central Bank of Georgia, USA Today, Brown University, CSX, the transportation company, according to our research, hands dipped and dripped in the transatlantic slave trade. Canadian National Railway Company, Mobile and Ohio, Brown Brothers and Harriman, Brooks Brothers.
No relation.
I ain't wearing a Brooks Brothers suit either. But it's some devil suit, probably. Unfortunately. Look, AIG, US Life. Let me say this. Not only are these companies here, we have to shut them down.
That's right.
We have to show that we have the capacity to punish these companies and show that we have the capacity to put economic sanctions on white corporate America.
Yes, sir.
Until our demand is answered.
Strong, brother. That's strong.
Our buying power, which is at $1.4 trillion per year. The question is, can economic sanctions be levied as a weapon in this fight? as a weapon in this fight, even if they're not involved in the slave trade. Well, what about Walmart? They're not involved in the slave trade.
Yes, they are.
Well, my opinion, get them too.
Yes, sir.
As far as I'm concerned, the whole structure, the whole corporate capitalist structure benefits from our enslavement and the discrimination against us. And I propose to every other person and every other organization and party that is fighting for this subject matter, that that's some common ground we can fight on.
Yes, true.
Anyway, we're going to move forward. Economic sanctions. Shut them down. What? I can't hear you.
Shut them down.
I can't hear you.
Shut them down.
I can't hear you.
Shut them down.
It's only one step beyond economic sanctions. And I don't know if I want to go into that right here on this rostrum with all of this security around here. So we'll leave you with that.
Yes, sir.
I'll take it as far as that. But others will know what I've said in private meetings, which I will not be going into right now. We have to force the issue. Brother Dashawn Farad, let me take your question, and then I'll turn it to Dashawn Farad. Come on.
Yes, sir.
Get the audience in.
How's everybody?
Great. All right, ask us a question. Come on.
My question, I'd like to compare reparations from 1865. When we talk about repair, we're basically talking about it was measured at that time in institutional ownership and control and property ownership and control. I'm speaking with the Freedmen's Bureau Act. So when you want to talk about legislation, we're right on top of the archives where these records exist. Now these were war records that were in place because blacks at that time had determined that in those southern states that what they had been building and what they had been working for was now theirs. So when you talk about economic sanctions, you're basically talking about they just decided they weren't going to work for them anymore. They said, we're doing all the work, we're not going to do anything. I built this house, it's mine. So there was a lot of confusion going on in those southern states. And that's basically what caused the southern states to lose control of the blacks at that time. So the North said, well, we got to do something about that. And I'm not trying to take a long time, but I'm trying to draw a comparison, because the same thinking that was available to us then is available to us now, and the same thinking that they had to keep us in slavery. That's why the sister said, what can I do to end slavery? Because in her mind, hey, guess what? We're still enslaved. Okay, so I just want to just make that point, because it may have sounded like her question was ridiculous. But it's not ridiculous, because in her mind, what she's seeing is slaves. Okay, so we're still in slavery. So the point that I'm making is that what was the mindset of them to determine to give us the Freedmen's Bureau Act? There was rebellions going on. They needed our labor. They need our labor today. So those companies that you just railed off, that's the Prison Corporation of America, there are 100 more and increasing every day.
What's your question?
So, okay, let me just formulate my question. To go to what Donald Temple said about the institution, because if you read the speech, the farewell speech of George Henry White in 1901, he measured what reparations looked like in the form of institutional ownership, which is businesses, which is schools, which is churches. You had the AME Church. They were a big part of our freedom at that time. So I guess the question that I'm just trying to get people, it's more of a focus on what is it going to take to get us to look at reparations in the form of institution.
All right.
What is it going to get us to call? And I also want to bring up very quickly the Honorable Minister Farrakhan. You can't talk seriously about any kind of revolution without dealing with him, because they're scared to death of him, and we're scared to death to mention his name sometimes too.
That's right.
So when we play that game, we know right now we get nothing, because he controls the army. He can call 100,000 or 200,000 to the mall right now. Men that will kill and die for him. So we're all following his pattern. Let's get that clear right now. There's nothing that's being said in this room today that hasn't been said by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan for the past 40 years. So we following in his footsteps, and right now he's the point man as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that statement. Okay, let me ask this question here. I want to ask this to Kenneth Henry, Sister Queen Kenneth Henry. I got your name right? From Cobra, and another reparations activist here, brother, Mr. John Cheeks of the American Recovery Act. I'm gonna come to this question. I'm gonna ask you here. I really want to be. Well, I want to be. Can I challenge you gently? Can I gently challenge you?
I don't know if I do.
Okay. That's what I wanted. The legislation, because I know you're not responsible for HR 40, right? There are critics, according to what we read, that are saying of HR 40 that say a study is not enough. And from what I know, Cobra is encouraging us to go well beyond study. Could you tell us, the audience here, what the National Coalition of Black for Reparations in America, what your current position is on HR 40? Is it strong enough, and what are you proposing as the future path from a Cobra perspective?
Where do you want to hear?
Wherever you decide, man. Whatever makes you most comfortable. Let's give her a hand, please.
First of all, Black Power.
Black Power.
Black Power.
Black Power.
I bring you greetings from Cobra. There are a couple of things I do need to make some corrections on. First of all, the original HR 40 was a study bill. That is correct. In 2016, it was very obvious that the harm against our people, the violence, etc., has been studied, restudied, and studied some more. Many scholars have written on it, so there's no need to continue to lobby for a study bill. And the bill was revised, and in 2017, with the 115th session of Congress, it became a remedy bill. So what we're asking for is to stand up a commission that will craft remedies that will address the multifaceted harms that have been perpetrated against the people. That's us. So it is no longer a study bill. It was rewritten and introduced in 2017 as a full remedy, full repair bill.
Okay, so let me ask. Okay, thank you for the clarification. Let me ask a follow-up question to that. How do you respond to the critics of an approach for reparations through the U.S. Congress that states that this majority white body of the Senate and Nancy Pelosi are never going to really cooperate with reparations and give us full and complete reparations? How do you answer that charge that's coming from certain quarters?
I think you've already answered it. It's by any means necessary. Yes. So we do start by playing inside the rules of this is where we get started with the legislation. However, if necessary, then it has to be by any means necessary. So my charge when I came here was to talk about education and what Cobra is doing. So one of the other things that I need to correct, or at least try and get clarification on, and I think the brother left already, is his HR 41, 42, 43, 44, 45. You're here? Oh, thank you so much, sir. Are those bills already introduced, or is this something that you plan to introduce somewhere down the road?
I would plan to introduce them within the next 30 days because so it's going to be, and Cobra's going to get a copy, Sheila Jackson Lee is going to get a copy, and we'll get a copy because it's going to be a draft for us to
to have a triggering mechanism for HR 40.
Okay, so just so we're all on the same page, there is already a HR 41, 42, 43, 44, 45 already out there. So, and I don't want anyone to walk away thinking that we're looking for those particular bills. They've already been introduced and they're out there. So to answer your question, sir, about what do we do, how do we tell people about reparations and who's for it and who's not for it. Right now, we have more co-sponsors on HR 40 than has ever been the case. For whatever reason, we all know that it's probably because we have candidates running for president or whatever.
Explain to them what you mean by co-sponsors to them. They might not be familiar with
all right. Thank you. A co-sponsor is an elected official who comes on board and says, I support that legislation. So
how many do we have? How many do you have now?
As of today, we have 90 co-sponsors for HR 40 on the House side, and we are excited, but we're not excited. You have 435 members in the House. So our charge is to continue. We actually rolled out a campaign where we're going to approach all 535 elected officials. That's the 100 senators on the Senate side and the 435 members of the House side. And our purpose is to ask for their support as a co-sponsor for HR 40 in the companion bill, which is S.1083 on the Senate side. On the Senate side, in the 2 months that it's been out there, we actually have 14 co-sponsors on the Senate side. And while these numbers may sound abysmal, they aren't, because never in the history of the push for reparations has there ever been that many co-sponsors. So this is progress, and it's progress that has been done by a very, very, very few people. So as we talk about collaborative efforts, as we talk about coming together on a united front, and of course, I believe that I can't fly without you. You all must become the wind beneath my wings. So collaboratively speaking, and not just this small group here, but we have to fan out all across this country and become a united force and send the message, as you said, sir, the message that this is quid pro quo. We are not giving anything if we're not going to get anything, and what we want is full support for the legislation that's in the House and the Senate.
All right.
All right. And those are speaking to us. And so before I turn it to Mr. Dashawn Farad, I want to go on record with every other organizer, every other group, every legal group, every reparations group in America or anywhere out there. We want to go on record that we are for, as I said before, for a common front. Our doors are open. Our phone lines are open. Our dialogue is here to be engaged in. We're at black-empowerment.com. Pardon me. black-empowerment.com. black-empowerment.com. We recognize there are many out there fighting for reparations. Yeah. And we say we need to be fighting together. Yes. We are pushing for what we call an interim government. We're talking about, as leaders, a process of government where we sit down and decide how we're going to make the legislative progress that Cobra and others have made. How we can make that go further. Yes. How we can address things that we may disagree on so we don't look all over the map in the public. We don't want just a lot of mess out here, people talking reparations, because you got the people's hope up. You get the people's hope up and the leadership doesn't handle it right, then we end up in another mess.
Right.
So we want to be clear that we're just a part of the process. We recognize the other groups, the organizers that are organizing, and whether they call us or not, we are making a public statement here now that we're willing to sit down at the table as equals. And let's negotiate how we put our power together, our forces together, because there's some power here. At 5 o'clock, we're going to be at the doorstep of the home of Senator Mitch McConnell.
That's right.
Who
Black
opposes
power.
reparations.
Black power.
At 5 o'clock, you will see is Imam Akbar here, the chief of staff for the new Black Panther Party, the great Imam Akbar.
Black power.
Soon, in dinner time, you will see the kind of pressure that we can apply.
Yes, sir.
There are unique forces here that are here right now that can make unique things happen at unique times.
That's right.
And that's why we have the new Black Panther Party.
That's right.
We have to have some enforcement out here on the streets. Right. We can't allow this frog. Hold on, let me. Right. I was gonna say he was a frog face looking, but I'm not. Because that wouldn't be so professional of me. So I won't say that he looks like a frog. I won't go into that. Mitch McConnell has offended us. He's attacked our position.
That's right.
And damn it, he lives on 617 C Street.
Yes.
He lives on 617 C Street Northeast. That's where he lives. And that's where we're going to be.
Yes.
For our reparations hearing and our First Amendment speak out. At 5 o'clock, we're going to be right on the devil's front door.
Yes, sir.
And that's the beginning of what we call revolutionary confrontational politics. And challenge whoever's in front of you. Let me be cool for a minute. 617 C Street. Everybody online. Everybody. You can still got a chance. Northeast DC. We're going to be deeper than this, than we're here right on his doorstep. And that in and of itself is going to be historic.
Amen.
That's right.
Nobody has confronted a U.S. official on his front lawn for damn near nothing. Let alone reparations. I took the risk of finding all this info out, setting it up, and helping us get there. All of that risk. Because trust me, when you planning something like that out, there's some risk.
Yes, sir.
So if I take all that risk, don't leave me hanging.
No, sir.
I want to see you
Never,
at 5 o'clock, man. They want to send a shockwave out here. All right, Farad. Come on, Dashawn Farad. Let's give Donald Temple a hand. Let's give Donald Temple a hand. Go ahead. Well, coming to you next, attorney.
Family peace. Listen, in the interest of time, I'm not going to give a whole diatribe. I'm Dashawn Farad, journalist, work with Dr. Boyce Watkins and several others, etc., etc. We're going to get this panel moving along, and I'm going to go to the next panelist. After I go to him, I'm going to go to the questions, but I must say ahead of time, family, in the interest of time, when we tell you to ask your question, we don't want to hear Michael Eric Dyson. Just ask your question and be gone, etc., etc. With all due respect, in the interest of time, we understand we all have a lot to say, but keep in mind, as people of African descent, we teach in a circle. This question is going to go to, first of all, I want to introduce the chairman of the DC Recovery Act, Mr. John Cheeks. Please give him a round of applause.
All right.
Mr. Cheeks, and I have the privilege of working with him. Why, after all this time, does it seem that the reparations movement, some would say, is ineffective? What has been our mistake in getting our money?
Good afternoon, people.
Good afternoon.
The reparations movement has caused division because of white America knows what the definition legally of reparations is in this country. Reparations means that any criminal who committed an act against the people of the country should be criminally prosecuted. We should take military actions after international governments who participated in the act. So that's why when you say reparations to a white American, they freeze up. Notice that. Go up to them and say, I want reparations. They're going to look at you and fright and run. because it's going to criminally prosecute them, period. And is going to take money and wealth from them. What we developed in the District of Columbia is called recovery. See, we started the Recovery Act in the District of Columbia in 2016 with the Honorable Malik Zulu Shabazz attorney.
That's right.
Other Nation of Islam members, through public radio Afro-American commentators who invited us to speak on it. And the DC Recovery Act is now alive. DC Recovery Act started the discussion of reparations.
That's
why
right.
you see your congressmen, your senators, and all of them talking about it. We started it here in the district, and it's so important to end it here in the district because of our federal position. We get the DC Recovery Act going here first. The rest of the nation is a piece of cake. That's right. Because they have to follow federal precedents. Now, have I met with some of the actors that the Honorable Malik Zulu has said? Yes. It's 83 of them. And out of the 83, some of them have 1 to 200 affiliates. And they are fully financially healthy. They offered me about $14 billion in the district, not to be recognized, but they want to start the payouts this year. We're going to vote on it, and if our vote doesn't work, or the system, I should say, turns our vote into a no-show, we're going to do what's called self-help and do a private corporation so that we can receive our benefits. The actors are ready to pay. They're not at all disputing. They're not at all. Now, since Congress ended, I should say, the June 19th discussion on when black people were actually injured, when the ending determination of injury, which is the hanging, the lynching. So that means that our injury has stopped this year. That's 78 trillion. Not 14 trillion, not 28 trillion. That's 78 trillion. Now the actors have the money. They have it over a 30-year cycle. It's not a hard amount of money for them to reach and to pay. We just all have to stay together the way that we are and move forward. Reparations is here for all of us to take advantage of. And if a brother goes out and get him a Cadillac or a Lincoln, he's going to help the economy.
That's right.
He's going to help. The brother is also entitled to $650,000 at the age of 55. But you must own a home. So if you don't own a home, we're going to give you a voucher. You go out and buy a condo or a house for $300,000 and get the rest in cash and call it a day with your Cadillac in your driveway, okay?
Okay, we're going to get back to the audience. Who's our sister here? Yes, ma'am.
Comment and question real quick.
And we know you'll be brief.
Yes.
As Donna who used to say.
Yes. My great-grandfather on my father's side, his name was Josh Horn. He was a slave. His other great-grandfather was Antonio Franklin. Antonio Franklin was born in Chihuahua, Mexico. I'm a member of Cherokee, Blackfeet, and Lulac. And the one thing that I have to disagree on is that when Native Americans and indigenous people and Latinos get together, they do not vote for anyone that does not support their positions. And as a member of Lulac, I dissent because I'm a black woman first. So when they get on someone that's going to be immigrants, they vote only for those politicians. Like today, they're down there looking at the camps. My question is, why aren't you looking at the people in Washington, D.C., the missing girls with their organs missing? So my question is, how are we all going to get together? Who's going to take the charge? Because I notice there's some groups that are missing, and I know that they're out there. And I know that, Rob, I agree with you on economic dispute. 100%. But I also agree that I know that you're waiting for them to contact you, and sometimes we should not wait. What I'm asking is, would you all please, someone take the lead to consider looking at all the groups that are still out there working for the same thing and contacting them so that we can get together. That's the only thing I have to say.
everybody here, especially those that are working close, Dr. Ansari and myself, every day, it's a continuous call for a united front.
Exactly.
Reach out, make contact, see what every other group is willing to do. We don't have any problem reaching out. We've reached out to many groups, they haven't reached back.
That's right.
But we'll continue to reach out to everybody, again, because we know that it's going to take more than this. But we're willing to roll with this. Nobody wants to work with us. All right, so let me, yes ma'am, please.
Thank you so much. Also, in Cobra is always reaching out. As a matter of fact, in a couple of minutes, one of my peers is on her way to be a part of a panel discussion, and it is a collaborative effort with the Union for Reform of Judaism and the Central Conference of American Rabbis. So we are out there. We have petitions out front. We invite you to go out to sign the one or both of them that you're comfortable with. One is asking for you to support full reparations, and the other is asking you to indicate your support for the legislation that's in the House. On Saturday, we were in Baltimore. We were with the All Healers Mental Health Alliance. So wherever there is an opportunity for us to be, we are there, and we are asking for support, and we are singing the same song. We must all come together collaboratively.
All right, all right. And I want to say we want better relations with Cobra. We have decent relations with Cobra. And I want to go on record and say we are asking for better relations. Is that right, Dr. Ansari?
That's correct, sir.
Okay, now and I'll come back to you, but I want to ask right here. We have Miss Jackie Johnson from Profile Africa. And we met her at the congressional hearings. And she's pushing for us to connect with the African Union. I want to ask a couple questions, and one's going to be controversial for you. There's a certain segment in the reparations movement that say that the African from Africa has nothing to do with this. Rather, we should be focused on them as defendants. There's an argument out there. I hope I ain't putting you on the spot too hard. But it'll be a good way for a smart person like you to ask. Have many of you heard this argument?
Yes, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
They say because it does say, even in the new Black Panther Party, third part of the platform says Africa. It says the Arabs, the Jews, the Catholic Church, white America. Also says Africa owes us reparations. Let me ask this: outside of that, what would be the role of our? Because my position is we're all African. I want to be clear on my position.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I ain't no American. Some folks around saying I'm American this, I ain't American, none of that. To me, that's no disrespect, but that's a backwards political terminology. To label yourself as American anything. So my position is that we are all an African people. We are all an African people. We have continental Africans, our brothers and sisters who live on the continent, and we are Africans of the diaspora. But what is the role of the continental African? What is the role of this African Union in the reparations cause? Talk to us, and let us welcome Jackie Johnson from Profile Africa. She's doing big things here in America to connect us with trade in Africa, but tell us about reparations. What do you all have to do with this?
Thank you very much. First of all, I just kind of want to introduce myself and my company a little bit, and thank you for having me here. But I do want to just give some acknowledgments first. And I want to first give honor to the royal houses of Africa from our ancestry that has called us all here today. And I also want to give honor to King Shaka Zulu and the Zulu Royal House, even as we have one of his standard bearers here today in Malik Zulu Shabazz, the Honorable. Thank you very much for being here. And I want to give honor to the God that I serve, the great I am that I am, and the great elders here today, and Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, who has been a forerunner or one who has continued this plight in reparations. And I do want to put a caveat there just to say that she is one of the most declarated Africans/African Americans in Africa. She's received the highest honor from several presidents on the African continent, which would be equivalent to the honorable congressional honor here in the United States, or the one that is actually bestowed by the U.S. president. So she's a very influential person on the continent. But my name is Jackie Johnson. I'm founder and CEO of Profile Africa Worldwide. We are a brand strategy, public relations, business development, media agency. And what we do is focus on exactly what our name is, Profile Africa Worldwide. Not just a name, but a mission. But I was in South Africa, which is where I straddle my time from here in the U.S. I was in South Africa on May 25th, which is Africa Day, 2012, when the African Union and the Pan-African Parliament declared the African diaspora, global African diaspora, as the sixth region of the continent of Africa. Many of us don't know that we are a part now of the entire African continent. And why did the African Union and Pan-African Parliament declare their diaspora a region now, officially, as a part of the continent? Because they want to build Africa together. They want to make sure that we have a part in Africa's growth story. Why? Because 7 out of 10 of the world's fastest growing economies are on the continent of Africa.
Come on.
So everybody else is there.
That's right.
Everybody else is there. The Chinaman is there.
Oh, yeah.
The French is there.
Yeah.
All the Europeans are there. Russia's there. And when you talk about Russia and China, they're in a growth group with South Africa even, called BRICS. Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. So they are global economic partners. So when we want to talk about our reparations here, it's so that not only we can prosper here, but also prosper there. And when we say that Africa owes even us something here in the U.S., you're absolutely right. And that's why they've made us and reinstated us, or put out a clarion call for us to return to the African continent. For many, you won't live there, but you can do business there. Yeah. You can grow there. You can partner there. And we need to be a collective so that we can continue convening and then collaborating and then creating, and then of course prospering. And I do want to say that I am officially raising cause with the African Union here in the U.S. There is an African Union embassy called the Africa House, and in it is run by the African Union ambassador, Dr. Arikana, who is the African Union ambassador to the diaspora, and she's located right here in Washington, D.C. But I do recognize not only their commitment to the diaspora, but there are two types of African diaspora. It is the immigrant African that is here in the U.S., and then it's us as descendants of Africa. And we want to make sure that as descendants, that we are truly the rightful recipients of reparations, and that we get our just presence in the African Union's plight to bring their collective diaspora together. And what that means too is that the African Union needs to be with us on reparations. We need a declaration coming from the African Union and all African ambassadors here in the U.S. to partner with our efforts. And that's what I want support for today.
You got that.
I want us to make sure that the African Union, because within all the African countries, that's right.
Black power.
Because we are stronger together than we are apart. Can I hear you say we are stronger together?
We are stronger together.
We are apart. And it's not over. It is not over. And we will be supportive of the forthcoming HR bills that continue this plight beyond examination and dialogue, because we've got to get the funds that even African countries have to engage business with us. That's why we have been brought on as part of the 6th region.
Yes, ma'am.
If we were not brilliant, they know some of the best minds came from Africa to these shores. And from sea to shining sea, we are still amazing. Amen. And so we have to not only work collectively within ourselves. Let us not miss this next economic explosion even that's taking place in Africa, because here's what I can promise you. After working 14 years on the Africa front, U.S.-Africa business, I was a big part of making sure AGOA, the Africa Growth Opportunities Act in Congress, got renewed during the Obama administration. And that legislation governs all trade between Africa and the U.S. and vice versa. And it fully supports small and medium-sized businesses in Africa that holds every African nation's economy together. And had that not happened, Africa would have fallen flat if AGOA had not been renewed, because most of their GDP is heavily reliable on trade with America. And we are typically Africa's #1 or 2 trade partner, where all their products and services can come duty-free into America. And if that didn't happen, we wouldn't even be able to have this conversation today. So we want to make sure that we get a global collective, and particularly from the continent, about being supportive of reparations, and ask of them to give us free trade. Ask of them to give us dual citizenship. I know Ghana has done that with a clarion call to ending 400 years of our being disjointed.